Well, I don't know about you, but the word bloodbath doesn't sound very good. And when it comes to what's supposedly or possibly could happen to Square Enix and other major video game studios, it's a real problem. And, somebody who would know something about that is Mark Kern, the former World of Warcraft team lead. And he's actually predicting that this is going to happen across the entire industry. Don't know what I'm talking about? Well, buckle up, because here we go. So let's start here. In Square Enix's results briefing session for their most recent quarter, which ended on March 31st, 2024, the company reported an increase from 343.2 billion yen, which is around $2.2 billion, to roughly 356.3 billion yen, which would be $2.3 billion. Not too shabby. However, despite that increase in overall net sales, well, the profitability of the company shrunk for a myriad of reasons, but they basically dropped the ball in profits from $315 million to $90.9 million. Not even $100 million. That 70% decline in profits is causing them to change their mind about the way they approach their business. And they are no longer going to have an exclusivity deal with anybody, it sounds like. The amazing details that you can find over on thatparkplace.com might be something you want to check up on, because they wrote a glorious story putting out all of the facts and making it much easier for me to make this video. Of course, I'm often over at That Park Place and That Park Place podcast online. I have to say, I have a lot of fun over there, as well as over on Pro's channel, so you usually find me somewhere around there. So to say that, having this much decline in profits is a problem would be, well, underemphasizing the issues at large. The change over at Square Enix has to come, because they have to be able to get their games out elsewhere. And again, exclusivity is going to evaporate probably across most of these studios. And some of them may be a little frustrated with how Sony operates because of their requirement for their own version of Always On. In a lot of the games now, you have to have a PlayStation Network account, even if you don't want one, even if you're tired of them governing whatever it is that you do, which could make some $70 purchases that you have unplayable, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. So they're going to be aggressively pursuing, in their own language, by the way, a multi-platform strategy. And that includes putting games out on Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. They're also actually looking at putting some titles on smaller devices like your cell phone and tablet, and maybe even your television, but iOS and Android are definitely one of the places that they're heading, with a few other things that they're kind of keeping under wraps for now. Inspired by this particular set of results, Mark Kern came out of the woodwork on Twitter, or X if you prefer. He goes under the name of Grums, and he's a great follow, and if you want to find out what's happening in gaming, he's usually the first to know about it, and usually the first to comment about it. He wrote specifically recently that more bloodbath at Microsoft as they face the music over $80 billion in acquisitions. And obviously 40 studios and all of that, they failed to actually grow their subscription game plan, which is the Game Pass, which I think is valuable to some, but not always. He also said that he expected Xbox execs to retire and get rotated out as the disaster snowballs. So heads are going to roll one way or another. Kind of like Hollywood, you may not know exactly why they had to pull the ripcord on their golden parachute. He also continued on saying that everybody is going to be going multi-platform as sales continue to soften. And you know what? That's not surprising. Exclusivity is only valuable when it's a tool for both parties. Right now, Xbox or PlayStation are really the only ones that are benefiting from these exclusive titles. They also can come with some hefty fees up front for the consoles themselves. And I think I can make an argument for the fact that console sales are going to evaporate because they're just too expensive. And in a conversation that I had today with Paul Chatto of Call Me Chatto, great channel, he particularly outlined the price point at which most consumers will bail. And I suggested that this number will go down. He thinks that at $400, you're about as high as a consumer would like to spend. And I think that number should be much lower, closer to about $250, based on the fact that almost all of your living items for your survival, your staples that you have to have as a human being, have gone up in price about 20% or more. In fact, in some cases, nearly 50%. And in the case of fuel, over the last few years, multiply how much it costs you by 4. That's right. So you're going to see more and more things like increased microtransactions. You're going to see a lot of subscription services move that direction and try to get more in-game items like worthless superficial skins and things like that, and some loot that might be exclusive to, well, you know, what you pay for it. Otherwise, there's no way to grind for that. At least those are my expectations. And let me tell you, with the experience that I've had on drop rates in World of Warcraft early on, I can tell you that grinding for some of this stuff can be 1,000 hours or more. Add to that the fact that Mark says that you're going to see EA talking about more and more ads. Now, EA is probably the worst gaming studio on the planet, or at least the least liked. And you can, dive more into that conversation from yesterday's Pop Culture Crisis, where they talk about just how bad EA is as a company. In fact, surpassing some airlines that everybody hates, which is astonishing to me. So ultimately, Mark draws a conclusion, and I think I agree with every part of it, which is you want to stop all this noise, you want to stop all this garbage in gaming, stop spending your money. You'll be far better off. Play your old games. Play the older games in Steam that you haven't invested the time in. You spent the money for acquiring it. Might as well play it. Find out if it was a good value at the time. Maybe that'll cause you to be a little more cautious in the future when you just randomly pick up games. Because we don't all have infinite time, and we don't certainly have infinite money. One of the great things he said on the way out the door in one of his tweets was, cancel your PSN Plus and fight the new Sony PlayStation Network requirements that seem to be being forced into more and more games, including Stellar Blade, which seems to be growing support for that game to reverse some of the stuff that got forced into it, and also, of course, some of the censorship that came along with it. He suggests that they're vulnerable now, and I agree. Sony certainly could be taken down a peg or two and try to respond to the 95% of their customers that really have made them successful. If you stop buying their games, stop using their PlayStation Network, and overall stop buying their console, they'll have to acquiesce, and maybe we'll get a win there too. To be fair, I haven't seen a good game come out in a very long time. And now that we know the influence of Sweet Baby Inc. over there at Rockstar, well, I'm not sure GTA 6 is going to be all that good anyway. And I will honestly, if I pick up the game, I will give you a review start to finish of what I think of the game. And while that may take a few videos, it'll be something that at least I'm passionate about, because I'm going to tell you right now, there are no future AAA titles out there that I have any passion for at the moment. And finally, one of the other things that can influence the way that games change is who they choose to lay off. And let me tell you, all of these studios are laying people off left and right. Of course, we already know Microsoft ditched a bunch of studios last week, and well, that hurt their business substantially. You also know that you're going to start to see other studios just struggle to survive, and while they may not necessarily disappear, they certainly won't be around long if they don't cut back in areas that are absolutely useless in the pursuit of profit. And I have to tell you, all this woke nonsense does not make money. And like I said, check out That Park Place, the website, thatparkplace.com, and look at all of these amazing stories about the gaming industry. Because I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to hear a lot more from me when it comes to gaming. And on that note, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya.